Is this the cat area? Is that what you're telling us?
Right. So no, it's like a kitten zone back there.
So was this like a with litter of kittens? Or
Yeah, and she does it somewhat regularly. You know, she's on some sort of group, and she fosters. I mean, when a mother just kind of like you just kind of help get kittens into um, ready to be adopted.
Right.
And so it's all right before they're fixed or whatever. And the long and short of it is, it's just very funny because it's just you've got these cats just
How long do you generally
it's
have?
usually like 2 or 3 weeks.
Oh, okay.
They become much more human attached after that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct. They're human attached. I mean, because in the beginning, they're terrified. They're hiding, and then you just see their development over time. They become, much more confident, comfortable around humans, and playful and stuff like that. It's very. And now it's hilarious because they're in our bedroom and the and so now it's like we're giving back on Wednesday and um and the and so they're really at their most they're ready. And so it's like there's 5 of them, but we don't want them in the closet because we don't want them all over the clothes and stuff like that. So in any event, it's like so you can if there's a door to the closet, you can step into the closet, and they're all so curious about what's behind that door. And so and so in order to get into the closet, you need to step in. And they come, and then you have to like pulling one out, and two out, and then but they keep running back in, and so it's just like it's like it's an effort just to keep them from all just like
You might want to get your clothes out for the week.
right. It's exactly what it is. And this morning it was like I forgot to get a belt, and I'm like, oh no. And I really was going through the mental debate about whether I should just even wear a belt at all today. Because it's like, because I had to go back into the closet, which meant another like 15 minutes is an exaggeration. More like 2 or 3 minutes of picking one up, and the other one comes in to pick one. It's just an assembly line of getting them out.
Do they have to be fed with a dropper, or how are they fed? No?
Fed with the regular. Yeah. Sometimes in the first day or two, maybe, but usually, I mean, that's part of the process is to wean them off of, also get them away from their mother. And so you have to you have to care for them as you're getting them away from their mother. Well, it looks like David is on the backside of where Ellen is. Hello, Arthur.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Jim.
Remember we read that book, 13 Petaled Rose?
Yes.
Was it Steinsaltz?
Yeah.
Because I see there's a helmet up there.
Same guy.
I was wondering if it was the same guy or not.
Same guy.
That was a fascinating book.
It was, yes.
I got in the car and I felt my watch like had a notification. I looked and it told me how long it would take to get here. It's like I don't know. This is where I'm coming.
Well, you must have on your calendar like Temple Bachelor, but
still. But I don't think I do for this class. But it just have I come. It's just a little creepy. Like it knows where I'm.
That is creepy. There's a lot of things like. Well, first of all, like I think we're now starting to get used to it, but the very fact that like you could be like I could be on the Home Depot website and yet see an ad for Israel bonds, right? Or I could be at on some random website and see an ad for a cruise that I was just kind of curious about, right? That they are so, how do I put it? Just.
But sometimes you're thinking about something and you see it on yours.
Yeah, that's what really gets me. Like I'll be talking to Nina about, should we go see our nephew in Texas? And then you see ad.
Well, do you have one of those Amazon like Alexas in your house?
No, we don't.
So maybe one of you like did a little search just for how much it would cost.
Maybe, but it's more mysterious. It's more like
But I've
It is
also,
freaky.
Yeah.
so
Big brother.
my husband and I have separate computers, separate accounts. He's not even on Facebook, but he's like shop for presents for me, and he has pop up on my Facebook page. It's like, oh, I guess I'm getting this.
Right. That's
Yeah.
takes away the joy of the
Right,
surprise.
right.
Hey,
Yeah,
artificial intelligence.
I know.
yeah.
Well, it's obviously getting. I mean, now there's really the artificial, like that. Just kind of the algorithms of kind of remembering and ad placement and stuff like that. But now there is this whole new concept of artificial intelligence, which I haven't even begun to fully appreciate. Just how, like, I do know, and I've tried it. I can go onto one of these AI websites, and I can say, give me a sermon on the Torah portion of whatever for this, and it will give it, right? It will write a sermon, which is amazing, except you just generally don't like it because it's not kind of my style or whatever. But it's still like, I wish I could give me a sermon that's,
Is it original?
well, it can't possibly, like, that's the thing. It can't possibly be an original thought. But what it is original to the degree, I think, that it's kind of mining for various different types of ideas that have come across. So it's not
But
plagiarized.
They're saying that it will become original.
I think some things will be, yes. But I'm not so sure, like, I don't know. It's like, it's really curious about, and it's kind of, I mean,
Well, we have the internet, now we have this. Who thought that we'd ever have the internet?
right. Right. And this is like the machines really taking over, which, I mean, I'll tell you what, I've always thought that in our society, that we have deprioritized and made it less of a premium the kind of job, the various different jobs which are trade jobs, like electricians and plumbers and things like that, in which there are fewer and fewer, of these types of jobs, people who are going into these types of professions, and it's going to become more and more at a premium to do these types of, because it's like AI can't fix a leaky sink, right? Or can't rewire your house. AI can tell you how to, maybe say, make you feel bad for not knowing how to do it.
But a robot
A robot might.
with AI
I think
certainly could.
I think a lot of lawyers are going to be put out of business.
Yeah.
Which is probably a good thing.
Right. Shakespeare would agree.
Talk about upheaval for higher education.
So it won't replace Torah studies.
What's that?
Lots of papers.
It won't replace Torah studies.
It won't be able to replace Torah study because AI won't be able to, like, can you imagine you got some robot in here? Like, how on earth could that robot, like, tell the type of great jokes and anecdotes that I'm capable of?
Maybe it'll tell better jokes.
Right. Like, that's what I'm talking about. All right. Well, it's good to see everybody. Welcome back. Welcome to those who are here. Welcome to those who are not. By the way, to those who are here, a gift from Paul Schatzberg. Hey, I'm now realizing why it is that this piece of paper has what appears to be words on the back of it. Here, you can just take a look at it. It's because I think there's something in our printer machine that was probably left there and it kind of stuck to the top, because in any event, the point is that you're welcome to have a copy of it if you want. This is Paul Schatzberg sent it in, asked Penny to make Xerox copies of it, and so I'm just the messenger. I can tell you this is from the book Young Joseph by Thomas Mann, and who wrote an extraordinary volume, 4-set volume on the story of Joseph and his interpretation of it in a narrative form. And I read it. You can just leave it there. I read it in anticipation. I read it in anticipation of when I was writing my thesis. It's really extraordinary, but at the same time, it's a lot. And I think what we're doing here is just as good too. I think we can make up for Thomas Mann, and we could have written our own little novel here. But Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu v'kavod kivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. praise you and our God for permitting us to visit yourselves in the words of Torah. So, okay, before we forget, I just want to make sure, double check my calendar. This is not, I know that with certainty, the last. Next week is our last Torah study class for the season. We'll pick up again at Simchas Torah of next year. So just telling you, we'll get in our last this week and next week, and that's it. For now. The rabbi gets a little, goes I check out, checking out. All right. So we are deep into the story of Joseph. We have let's see, we're on page chapter 43, I think, verse 29 or something like that, which is page 94 if you have my text. No, excuse me, verse 31, which is page 94. You have my text. We where we left off was this is the second journey down by the brothers to Egypt for food. The first time came with success, except that it was incomplete. And the reason why it was incomplete is because they needed to bring their other brother Benjamin down. And so what they did was Simon or Shimon or Simeon was kept as a prisoner as a way of making sure that they came back. So they have come back. This time, against Jacob's better judgment, especially because at first, Reuben said, "You can kill my two sons if I don't bring back Benjamin safely." And Jacob said, "Are you crazy? That's just the type of insanity that has brought us to the place that we are right now." And then more time passed. They're kind of going through their food rations, and Judah says, send the boy with me so that we can live and not die, and I will be, I will, it's not my children, but rather it's on me. It's not about anybody else. And Jacob grudgingly sends Benjamin with the brothers back down to Egypt to get more food. They get to Egypt. They are immediately greeted, brought in by the steward to the house, and they say, hey, we got this money back from you on the way up to the first trip, but it's totally a mistake, and we're really, we're here to return what's not ours. And the steward says, oh, don't worry, it's all good. We don't accuse you of anything. And they bring him in, and finally, for the first time, Joseph sees his brother Benjamin. And this is the where we kind of left off last week, in which Joseph sees his brother Benjamin for the first time, and it's a very powerful scene. In verse 29, it says, verse ends with, after Joseph saw him, and he says to Benjamin, "May God be gracious to you, my boy." And you can feel you can almost hear in Joseph's voice as he's saying that, like his voice breaking, may God be, he's like about to break out into tears, and it's it's touching, and we and again, I keep going back and forth just because I'm finding right now this to be, for me, not necessarily for you. You guys might be finding this to be tiresome already, and I get it. But for me, I find really what I have really been fascinated by as we've gone through this now reading again of the text, is the whole notion of, was Benjamin born or not? Is this the first time Joseph is meeting his brother or not? Because again, I wish I was a lawyer, an AI lawyer, because I could really very strongly make arguments for both sides, and very compelling arguments in which I'm certain it would be a hung jury. without any type, there would be not without a shadow of a doubt. It is not clear to me whether Benjamin and Joseph have ever seen each other before. Um, and so, and what I consider to be that ambiguity only adds to what I consider to be the emotion of this moment. Because the very fact that I am kind of curious about it. Now, granted, again, only me and me telling you to discussing with you. It's not like the normal reader of the Torah the Bible is actually having this conversation about whether Benjamin was born, if this is Joseph's first son, because most people are seeing the Torah as, just at least as presented chronologically for us, and that why, under what circumstances, you have to really go deep and to ask yourself these questions of whether he's alive. He was born, and so, but either way, it's very emotional, right? If it's that it was his younger brother, the one, and his full brother, younger and 100% brother, as one would argue for sure, then it's certainly he was very young, and as Thomas Mann says here, by the way, they have this very intensely beautiful relationship that greeting each other again would be so important for Joseph and so significant that he would break. But the flip side is, what happens if it's a brother that he never knew? All along he thought he was really an only child to parent one and parent two, and then finds out based upon that first trip down that the brother said, and we have another brother, right? That he actually has another brother, and he's seeing for the first time that is his own 100% flesh and blood, full 100% brother. It's very powerful. My next door neighbor, I'm not going to say the name, but other than she would care. She is a generation older than me. She is 20 years old, and she found out 2 years ago or 3 years ago that she has a sister, and they have been they are like loving each other. Like, it's a very powerful. They found out because her father clearly had, there was an affair with another woman. Wait, hold on. So wait, I think it's okay. Now she has a sister, but it's a half sister. But you know, but the half sister was an only child, and my neighbor had a brother and a sister, but the sister passed away. But long and short of it is, then they're kind of connecting. It's a very powerful, sweet, touching story, right? And so here it is. Imagine if you find out that you have a sibling you never knew about, and especially one that was actually to your mother and your father, as opposed to all the other ones which were step's.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
something just occurred to me, and
Yeah.
I just went back and double checked. There was nothing in the first contact with his brothers that said that it's the same mother. There was
Correct.
nothing that said there is a younger brother, but it doesn't say which mother, or could there be a third wife, so that he doesn't really know if this is a full brother or a half brother.
That's correct. We do know that it says about the other ones that, and I think that it even, well, it doesn't say about Rachel because she died in childbirth, but it says about the other ones that she ceased to give birth. That was the end of her birth, like no more children. That said, you're right. It could be a fifth mother. However, I think that for the sake of our conversation right now, but you're 100% correct. I think for the sake of our conversation right now, it's kind of helpful for this narrative and dialogue conversation that he believes it to be his only, younger brother, but
we know that Benjamin's mother is Rachel. We know that.
Correct. Joseph doesn't. That's what.
No, that may be true or not.
That's what we're saying. We know,
but we know there's no third mother.
That's correct. So to Arthur's point, even though Joseph has no idea, we know, and since we're the readers, we get to kind of at least insert that into our kind of into the pot that we're stirring up right now. But you're 100% right, Ellen. We don't know. But excuse me. Joseph doesn't know, but we do. So in any event, verse 30 says, which we did last week, um, Joseph, so he sees his brother and then he runs out. And whereas in the first example, we learned about Joseph kind of crying, when he saw his brothers for the first time, and then he cries when they're yelling at each other when they're yelling at each other in the prison. Um, it's just kind of like he's crying, and we kind of feel the emotion that's him. But here, it's really very tangible that he hurries out because he's overcome with feeling toward his brothers and was on the verge of tears. He went into a room and wept there. Then he washed his face, reappeared, and now in control of himself, gave the order, serve the meal. Yes.
Just a little question.
Yeah.
Why did Joseph consider the delegation incomplete minus one person, i.e. his brother? On that premise, they left they left Egypt and went back to father.
Right.
So that whole premise of that exodus, in a way, going back and then coming back, was based on the Benjamin story to me.
Correct. I think what you're saying is, why was it that Joseph was hung up on coming back again with Benjamin?
Mm-hmm.
Because, and that is the essence of this story. And that question is the essence of the story, which is because Joseph realizes, well, two things. Number one is, at least as it appears here, Joseph really just wanted to see his brother. Right? I mean, he was probably just really desperate to see this Benjamin. And the only way to do it would be to kind of keep some collateral around to make sure that they come back and bring Benjamin. But the second and probably more important response is because Joseph saw this as a way of determining if his brothers had changed, because he was setting up a scheme, which was going to be, I'm going to recreate the very circumstances that had me sold to slavery, and I'm going to see if you would do it again. So that's ultimately the reason. But the third thing is, which I think is important for us just to bear in mind, and I'm saying this because I do understand it to be part of the narrative, but I do want to channel my inner Arthur on this, which is that, look, the fact is, because the next question which would follow would be, why does Joseph care? Why doesn't Joseph just say, I'm doing well in Egypt here. You guys can starve. All I care back in Canaan. This is like what your issues, and the answer is because Joseph believes that God has sent him to Egypt for a purpose, and that is to save his family. But he can't do that with a full heart unless he knows that the brothers have changed. And so Joseph is looking for a reason for them to be changed, so he can say, hey, I'm Joseph, come bring your family down here, bring dad down, come back with all the flock, and let me be the Messiah, let me save you from certain death. And so that the ultimate reason is because Joseph wants them to come down so he can save them, and because he believes that God has sent him to Egypt with a purpose. Secondarily, and so now take a step back, in order for that to happen, he needs to test the brothers to see if they've changed. And now, as an addition, as I mentioned in the first thought, which was, I'm sure he's really wants to see his brother.
I get the sense, though, somewhat that underlying a lot of what Joseph is doing is kind of an anger, like a festering anger that he remembers what was done to him, and he's going to sort of drag this thing out a little bit, make his brothers suffer just a little bit, as an act of revenge.
Yeah, I think so.
There's an element of that.
The resentment's still there, even though he's he's made it. Right? Now it's just
He's
It's a little bit of little bit of resentment,
he
a
can
little
kind
bit
of
of
lord it over them for a
yeah.
while.
There's no question about
Yeah.
it. And the way he
Rabbi,
does things, and the way he does 1 second, and the way he does things suggests that, right? The kind of how he just slowly kind of puts them in the prison a little while so they could just so they could stew over it and argue about it, and he could just kind of watch them. Like, yeah, there's no question, there's no doubt. Someone up here who was saying,
yeah,
Yeah.
I had a question about the statement that you just made, that it was the point to bring them to him and to save his family. In that case, why didn't he ask for his mother and his father to come with Benjamin?
Right. So that's
He
one of
wanted
the
to
arguments, by
save
the
the
way,
whole
against
family.
his mother being alive. Or, well, I know, but I think they tell him that your mother's dead. But he doesn't seem to. I think someone
So
mentioned it.
why aren't they asking? Why didn't he ask for the father to come too then?
Right. So wait. So hold on. Well, one thought first, which is that one argument that Benjamin was indeed alive when Joseph was sold into slavery is that he didn't seem to be too affected by the fact that he didn't have a mother any longer. Um, or, so, and I realize that that's a very compelling argument in the other direction. But why did he ask for his father to come? I think it's because it was just too I think it was like he knew that he needed to take he wasn't going to ask for father to come until he saw that his brothers were in kind of in a place where he could ask for his father to come. It was like,
how far a journey is this?
Very hard. Very. I mean,
so they're going to have to go back, get Benjamin. Then they're going to have to go back and deliver Benjamin. Then they're going to have to go back and get the father. And then they're going to have to go back and bring the father. And that's a lot of backs and forth.
Yes, it is. It's a lot of backs and forths. And so at least he won't make his father do it twice.
Rabbi?
Because again, wait 1 second, Barbara. Because again, the presumption is they're not coming down with the whole encampment. They're just coming down with, because I think it's like, when you're moving and you have the moving van, that's a big deal to make that trip. When you're just coming down with provisions to bring back provisions, it's a lot easier. You're only bringing, your car, you're moving your kid into college, you're just doing it with maybe a U-Haul. But if you're moving the whole family down there, then you need a moving van, the 18-wheeler, and it's a big deal. So I think what's going on is it's like, I mean, it's a huge thing to do that trip. And B, though, and maybe he's just trying to spare his father from doing it, but I really, really believe at its core, it's also because there's still a chance in Joseph's mind that he's not bringing his father back or anybody back, because he believes it's possible that his brothers haven't changed. And if so, I mean, we'll find out, because and we'll see that plan that still is working its way through. He's gonna be confronted with that possibility of that happening soon, when hopefully we'll get to it next week, which is how that might still happen. If he brought Jacob down, then it's possibly maybe forcing Jacob to go back. Yeah, Barbara.
Is it possible that the brothers did not recognize him? So, but they were, they were little, and they were 20 years ago, and it's understandable with all those brothers that they might not have recognized him. But for Joseph, he was the favorite of his father, and a father or mother or a parent doesn't not recognize their children.
That's a great point. That he might feel as if his cover may have been given away if Jacob had come down to see him, as opposed to because Jacob could say, "Oh my God, you look just like your brother, Esau did, your uncle Esau did when he was that age." Well, you get my point. When my mother said, "Oh, you look just like when he was this age," or whatever. So yeah, you're right. That's good. That's a great thought too, for sure. All right. So verse 32. They served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, for the Egyptians could not dine with the Hebrews, since that would be abhorrent to the Egyptians. Okay. there's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot of writing there, and it's how do I put it? It's so again, we're talking about this meal that Joseph says, serve the meal, right? And so to kind of give a sense of what it looks like, it's like there's three different rooms. Room one is for Joseph and Joseph alone. Room two is for the Egyptians, and room three is for the brothers, right? Now, why would he do such a thing? So, number one, he's serving food. I think I mentioned this last week. That is kind of that from what historical narrative or what historical sources say is is uh, is not usually eaten by the Egyptians. Number two, excuse me, maybe I mean he's still obviously trying to create this. If he just kind of dines with them, right? It's like it's even more like he's still trying to keep a little bit of the cover distance, and for that matter, to have those brothers just kind of looking around and saying, "Wait, should we eat this? Should we? Is it poisoned? Is it like?" And so they're not necessarily seeing Joseph. But why is it that Joseph is separate from the other Egyptians?
One of two things: his position, or the fact that he's the Hebrew, and Egyptians don't eat with Hebrews.
Perhaps, maybe that's exactly correct.
Or it could be because he's too exalted to eat with the peasants.
Right. Correct. And there are sources, by the way, which confirm, like I think it was Herodotus, who confirmed these types of, that the Egyptians, had dining system styles that they wouldn't dine with foreigners, stuff like that. I mean, I haven't read that. I was kind of reading about that, but I looked at another source which said, and I looked at another source which said there is nothing that confirms that this ever happened. So I don't know what to make of this.
Yeah, my book said that was the tradition.
What's your book? Let me see. Which book are you reading? The Hurt.
Yeah.
So he says it's the tradition, but I was looking at another one said there's nothing which suggests this, and then I was looking at a third which said that Herodotus confirms. It's like very. I don't even know what difference to make, but whatever.
What I've learned in the past, which I don't really buy into because it's so extreme wild, is that the Hebrews ate lamb and the Egyptians worshipped sheep. And therefore, it was abhorrent to them, the idea that the Hebrews would be eating lamb.
No, that was the first thing I was suggesting. I'm agreeing with that, which is that the Egyptians don't eat that. Because that's one of the foods that they don't eat.
But the part about worshiping sheep.
Oh, right. Yeah, who knows why? But whatever reason why they don't eat it, they don't eat it.
Yeah.
Right. Now, I can't say that I don't know that. That's just what I learned. I mean, when I was reading and stuff. But I think that they eat lamb in Egypt now. But maybe that was like ancient Egypt, they didn't eat lamb. But God.
But Joseph should have been eating with the Egyptians. He's been there for 20 years. He's intermarried. So there's only a psychological reason why he wants to sit by himself.
Right. Unless he also is eating lamb and they're like, oh, I can't believe he's eating, and so they won't eat at the table with him. Remember, because he's eating lamb, because he has that's the dinner or the lunch that's being set out for these special honored guests, and they're like, can't believe it's that. But all the Egyptians are like, we'll have the lentils, we'll have the vegetarian selection, please. And Joseph's eating the lamb too because he's from he doesn't care. I'm just throwing out possibilities. We don't know.
It's like he has such an exalted position that he would eat by himself.
Yeah, that's all. It seems like that's the simple reading of this, but who knows?
I think so.
But yeah, but if that's the case, though, I might agree. That's of course where I'm going with this, but why? But the Egyptians just can't eat with these. I mean, it's the whole thing is a little weird. And again, I think ultimately, who cares? That's just what's happening. Verse 33. As they were seated by his direction, from the oldest in the order of his seniority to the youngest in the order of his youth. The men looked at one another in astonishment. So why? I mean, so let's talk. I think I would say that what's important is the astonishment. Why are they looking at each other? Because, by the way, that's a huge word, right? That is a huge word, A, and it's a huge emotion. Huge word and huge, like, I'm looking at you in astonishment means I am floored right now, right? And it's and the very fact that I'm being floored and the very fact that the Torah describes them as being floored. So what is it that's flooring them?
Well, I would think in addition to the fact that they're going to have this meal after
Right.
everything else they've been through,
Yep.
that it doesn't say that the steward said, oh, and arrange yourselves in order of age, then that suggests that Joseph knows.
Ding, ding,
order
ding,
of their
ding, ding.
age.
Mazel tov, you got it. That's the reason. That it's like under what circumstance? Like the very fact that they are still having this like 5-course, what is it, 3-star Michelin guide meal in the Egyptian palace when all they did was come and try to buy grain, which is what everybody is doing, and yet somehow, some way, they have been treated differently. Not to mention the whole Shimon was jailed, bringing back a brother and the whole thing is just so curious. And now they're in the house, in like you're not dining in the White House. You're dining in the private residence of the White House. It is just they're looking at each other like, what is going on here? And then on top of it, there are name cards in front of everybody's plate, which has them seated by age. And they didn't give their passport when they arrived and give their age. And they're like, it's right now, I am certain that one of the brothers has decided to do the Rod Serling, the Twilight Zone kind of little thing, in which he's like claiming that, okay, now is it. How did he know our ages?
You have mentioned one of the reasons for this, minus the Benjamin story, is that it was a God-given message to Joseph.
Joseph believed that, yes.
So it is a Rod Serling kind of a thing.
Not for the brothers. I'm saying that Joseph believed that he was sent to Egypt for the purpose of saving his family from and delivering his family. And he has said it. No, he didn't say it yet. He said other things about God bringing him down there. But he will say it again multiple times. That brothers, don't worry. This just because you did bad for me, God meant this for good. This is what I was brought here to do. So, but the brothers don't know this. That's the opposite. The brothers are still. I mean, but what I will say is, last week we talked about what I believed were the various different times when Joseph was trying to give clues about who he was to them, and they just weren't biting. Like this, the clue of clues. How did this guy not know? How did this house know who's the oldest? Like because by the way, it's most of Benjamin being the one-off, being younger considerably, Joseph being the second youngest, but the brothers are relatively close in age. I mean, the birth happened and boom, 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 boom. You have to assume that every single one of those births were at most a year off, and in those 9 months of pregnancy and maybe a couple months of post-pregnancy recovery before they're pregnant again. But that's A. And B is that we know the order of birth, but it's entirely possible that the handmaid and Leah and we're all pregnant at the same time. Like it's not about everyone happened next year. That a lot of these So it's not also like, oh my God, well, this one's 80 and this one's 60, this one's 40 and this one's 20. Pretty obvious what their ages are. Rather, we're talking about these, they could have been, 5 or 6 of them could have been within a year and a half apart.
Yeah.
I mean, so in any event, they are astonished by how they have been ordered by birth order with good reason. And then the next verse is just is just is just also flooring, jaw dropping. Because the final verse of this chapter is portions were served them from his table, but Benjamin's portion was several times that of anyone else, times that of anyone else, and they drank their fill with him. So, okay, so there's a lot to be said here. And who knows, we may spend the next half an hour talking about this verse alone. What is going on? What is it? So there are two things there are a few things from this that I think are really, really worthy, but anybody want to start the conversation?
Well, I don't know whether it's significant that they were served from his table. I don't know whether that was everybody was served from his table,
Good
or
point.
That I don't know.
That wasn't even when I actually thought about that. I said there are two things, and then I said there's a few, and then I changed to a few things, and I said there's the fact that they're served from Joseph's table. Okay, what does that mean? I don't know. Well, it definitely means that they're eating the same thing. So, meaning that
they're not getting gruel.
They're not getting gruel. That Joseph is eating the type of food that they eat. I really do think that kind of connects them. That it also means that clearly that it's just something the Torah is communicating, that they are continuing to be exalted, and that Joseph is certainly sparing no expense to host them. But then it goes
also
on. Yeah.
That if they're suspicious, he's eating the same thing they're eating.
Right. They're not being poisoned. It's like
right.
It's like the what is the official taster for the the emperor? Right. What's that?
The wine taster who was put in prison.
Oh, that's true too, which is right. Right from the Pharaoh's taster. But what I'm saying is like you see the classic examples of in the Roman times when you would have someone who would taste the emperor's food first to make sure it wasn't poison.
I think he was tweaking them.
What's that?
I think he was tweaking them.
What do you mean by that?
Just, it's part of lording it over them. He just wanted to provoke them a little bit more. He was still that kind of anger underlying his behavior, and it comes out, and we're very close to the climactic scene, but this was kind of like one last tweak.
Yeah.
In my mind.
Well, I would think the triple portion.
There we go. That's
goes along with that.
That's the tweak of tweaks.
That's what I'm referring.
Oh, right. That's the tweak of tweaks. Right when he says, so he comes and he puts several times that of anyone else's portion in front of Benjamin. Right. Okay. Why does he do that? So the tweak, but it's really a much more very, very intentional thing that he's doing. Right? What's he doing? It's not just to provoke them. He is literally showing intent. He is handing Benjamin a multicolored striped tunic.
Right, I hear it.
Right? Oh, okay. Let's put it in more. You get a little vest. You get a vest. You get a vest. You get a vest. Everyone gets a vest. You get the three-piece suit. Okay. Right? That's what's happening here. And what he is doing is he is showing its favoritism, and it is Jacob's favoritism of Joseph all over again.
It's kind of like paper.
No, close. Yes and no. It's not payback. It is let's see how you react to him getting the coat. It is no question. It is a 100%. exact replica of scene 1, which happened at the beginning of chapter 37. Here is your striped tunic. Let's see if the brothers hate him in their hearts, just like they hated Joseph. Yes, Laura.
Benjamin's the only one that did not harm him out of all the brothers, though.
Mm-hmm. That's
so
true.
Could it not just be that he is, in addition, not just, but in addition, he's the only brother that did not cause him any harm?
Yeah, for sure. And he's also the most beloved brother. So there's no question. I mean, okay. So if you didn't have the original scene about the favoritism with the coat, you could very much say, sure, he got the triple portion because he was his full 100% brother, and B, because he's the only one who never actually harmed him, and C, because he loved him more. You know, and yes, all that is absolutely true, but I can't read this without thinking that this is really just this is just all part of Joseph's very, very, not just clear, but intentional and calculated plan to recreate what happened to see if the brothers will do it again. Part A, let's just start easy. Coat, metaphoric coat, which is give you 3 times as much food. And let's see, and let's take a look at, and when I give him 3 times the portion, I'm going to be paying very close attention to their eyes, to if they roll their eyes, to see if they are growling, to see if they're snickering, if they're elbowing each other one to the next thing, like, or are they just going to be, okay, it is what it is.
Maybe interesting to know what Benjamin's reaction was.
Right, we'll never know. But it's like,
what's going on here?
Right, right. It's like, probably would have been better if the Torah had said that Benjamin gloated a little bit. Right? That would have helped Joseph.
Of course, we don't know if Benjamin has been super favorite at home, if he just takes it as part of his due because he's accustomed to being spoiled.
Okay, yes, and what Thomas Mann writes about this, and what others have written about it too, which again, no one knows. So all we could do is just, your opinion is as good as anyone's opinion. But Thomas Mann writes, and I remember this very specifically, that he writes that Benjamin was embarrassed by it and tried to be treated the same as everybody else. Whereas Joseph was more than happy to be the chief supervisor over all of his brothers and accept the favoritism. Benjamin didn't like it. Now, again, that's just what Thomas Mann wrote. But it's kind of, so I've always unconsciously or subconsciously, I've always just kind of assumed Benjamin didn't like it, but I mean, no one.
Benjamin may know a bit
about what happened before.
That his brother at least was a show off or whatever.
It didn't go.
And then he mysteriously disappeared. So he may be like, "Whoa, this is my doing."
Right. If you want to know, check the East River in New York at the bottom. Okay. And the last line, by the way, of this verse is actually more interesting than you know, because you have to speak or be able to read Hebrew to appreciate it. So in English it says, and they drank their fill with him, right? But the Hebrew says, Vayishu vayishkeru imo. So I think I'm going to help you by using a word which maybe some of you have heard in the past. And when I say it, and then maybe some of you have heard it in the past, you'll be like, oh. So has anyone ever heard, in their house, their grandmother or their mother refer to another person as a shicker?
Yes. Someone who's drunk.
Someone who's drunk.
Yeah.
A drunk. A shicker.
I didn't realize that the shicker word was Hebrew.
Yep.
But here it is.
Here it is.
Shikaru.
Yep. There you go. So the Hebrew is vayishtu, which means and they drank. Vayishkaru, and inside of the word vayishkaru, if you take out the va, yi, and you take out the u, you got shikar, which means drunk. So they drank and they got drunk with him. So why? I think everyone knows why this is kind of now adds a little bit more interest to this story, because Joseph is also, it's like there's that people who say when a person says something nasty or racist or inappropriate, and they say, "I was drunk when I said it," right? And I always say, when a person uses that excuse, I always say, okay, being drunk doesn't create thoughts in your mind. Being drunk just stops the filter from saying the things that are in your mind, right? You say those things when you're drunk. You always thought them. You just knew better than to say them, right? So in other words, getting drunk here means that Joseph is creating even more of an environment for the brothers to be their true selves. Understand what I'm saying? Yeah, all right.
I have a question about pronouns.
Go ahead. That's
34
always a fun
starts.
one. Right? And then afterwards, we'd like to talk about basic calculus. Okay.
Portions were served them, the brothers,
Yeah.
from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was several times that of anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And they, the brothers, drank their fill with him. Is that him, Joseph, him, Benjamin? Is there any way to know?
There's no way to know. I read it as Joseph, but there's no way to know.
What difference would it make? Why are they back with Joseph if they were eating without, in a different area from him?
Well, it's a good question. And I think
that the pronouns, is it any clearer in Hebrew?
No, unfortunately, It's not. And they drank and got drunk with him. It's not. Look, no, I have nothing. I can't add any more clarity to this than you have. The Hebrew does nothing. I can tell you what I always thought it was, which was the brothers, drinking and getting drunk with Joseph. But it could mean Benjamin too, for all we know. But it's I don't know. Yeah.
I'm sure they're in the same room at 3 different tables.
That's how I saw it too. That's how I saw it too. Same room, 3 different tables, but we don't know that. But that's how I imagined it.
And coming back to the earlier situation where what the Hebrews ate was abhorrent to the Egyptians, from all of the photographs on walls we have in Egypt, they sometimes hunt waterfowl and therefore eat it. They of course have grain because of the Nile, whereas the Israelites they're shepherds. Yes.
And we also know, by the way, from a later point in the text, which we'll see later, but it says that a couple chapters later, Joseph and Jacob will be down, and Jacob's about to meet the Pharaoh for the first time, and and Joseph advises Jacob as to how to talk to Pharaoh and says, you'll be living in Goshen. It's because we're shepherds, and so we have to live outside of town. We're not allowed to be here because shepherding is abhorrent to the Egyptians. And that's what the text will tell us about later. So that all adds to the fact that eating the slim is not very common for them. In fact, perhaps even abhorrent to them. Okay, so chapter 44. Woo! New chapter. So so we're getting to the climax. Then he, that is to say Joseph, instructed his house steward as follows: fill the men's bags with food as much as they can carry, and put each one's money in the mouth of his bag. Okay. I'm gonna blow your mind with an idea, with an insight, which I wish I could say I had. It's my own original idea. It's not. It is Richard Friedman's. By the way, the same guy who wrote the Bible with sources revealed, and the same guy who wrote the Exodus book, I think, and just a great biblical scholar. Really, really like him. In any event, so Richard Friedman points out, and he says, think about this whole silver thing. And he says the first time that the brothers come down, 10 brothers come down, and 9 go back because Shimon stays in prison, in captivity. And so 9 go back with silver, and therefore the brothers return to Egypt with their grain plus 9 portions of silver. Money, silver, it's the same word. Kesef means silver and means money in Hebrew. So the second time they come, Joseph returned all brothers, 11 brothers. Remember, the first time 10 brothers, now 11 brothers come, because Benjamin included. And Joseph has all 11 sacks returned with silver. So far, are you with me? That is, if you add those two together, 9 plus 11 equals 20. I know that the math is just as miserable as Laura's grammar question. Now, so they have 20, so they have been given 20 pieces of, or portions of silver or money in their bag total. So, do you recall?
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Shimon was not back with silver. He was a prisoner.
Correct. That's why it was 10. That's why there's 9 that go back. 9.
Yes.
Because
and then 10 go back.
No, 11 go back. Shimon and Benjamin and the 9 equals 11 the second time. Right?
Okie dokie.
That's why it's 9 plus 11. So here's the point. When Joseph was sold into slavery by the brothers, they sold him for 20 portions of silver.
Interesting. Wow.
And it's like this is Friedman's idea, not mine. I wish I could come up with that. That's beautiful. And he talks about how it's like the measure for measure. It's like it's like the Torah kind of whether that was intentional or not, I have no idea. But it's like the Joseph is trying to undo almost all of the wrongs and all of the pain that kind of happened. It's almost like therapy. His therapist said, "All right, if you want to be whole again, Joseph, then start this way. You got to undo all of these things. Let's start with the coat. All right, so he did that with the food, with Benjamin and the silver, and will the brothers tell you? Like it's kind of an interesting little come around. 9 plus 11 equals 20. I again wish that I had that was my original thought, because that's great. And then it says, verse 2, put my silver goblet in the mouth of the bag of the youngest one, together with his money for the rations. And he did as Joseph told him. So the steward is now Joseph is setting up the final test. And what he is doing is he is going to frame Benjamin for theft. Benjamin is completely innocent. The brothers are, at least in this story, innocent. And Joseph, though, is trying to, even though he knows they're innocent, Joseph is trying to recreate how will the brothers act when that favorite youngest brother is put in a difficult situation, and how will they deal with that that Jacob's favorite being lost. And will they deal with it the same way that they did the first time, which was lie and and not to mention contribute to it or be the perpetrators of it. So verse 3. With the first light of morning, the men were sent off with their pack animals. They had just left the city and had not gone far when Joseph said to his steward, "Up, go after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, 'Why did you repay good with evil?'" Right? So again, Joseph is just including his steward in the scheme, which, of course, Joseph's not going to go and chase after them alone. Joseph, of course, is going to send a steward. It wouldn't be plausible any other way. And but the steward is in on this gimmick and on this little ruse, and he's setting he's setting up the brothers. It is the very one from which my master drinks and which he uses for divination. It was a wicked thing for you to do. So, go ahead, Karen, you got a thought?
Well, it's also kind of far-fetched. They weren't even seated at the same table. That'd have been pretty daring.
Yeah, maybe though, is what he's trying to say is like, oh, when we all got up and everyone went to the bathroom, you went over to the table and then right, cup under the jacket, and right. Of course, it would be absolutely daring, completely far-fetched, and totally foolish, considering the fact that these brothers were, had brought back the original pieces of silver. Why would they then? I mean, but that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter. The whole point is that the brothers don't know whether Benjamin did or didn't steal this goblet, but the brothers are still confronted with how they're going to deal with it. But we haven't gotten quite there yet. But the steward, go ahead.
No, it was giving Joseph pretext.
Right, correct. Yeah. To get to that next stage of seeing what happens. Gotcha. So, but the steward though says, and which is kind of interesting, the steward kind of describes the goblet, right, as the one from which my master drinks and which he uses for divination. Right? Now we know, by the way, that later on in the Bible, and I know this with certainty because I was just going over with a bar mitzvah kid yesterday, that divination is not okay in Jewish tradition, but that'll be later in Deuteronomy, not yet. But the bigger point is that the steward is communicating that the cup is used for divination. In other words, telling the future. What's fascinating is, indeed, that cup will tell the future. That cup will be giving some answers, just not in the way that the steward is communicating about how that cup gives answers, right? That cup essentially will be the fulcrum upon which the story will balance. But but he's claiming that it's because he's going to put his wine and his tea leaves and his and his Turkish coffee grounds in there, and that's how he'll find out the answers. But really what it is that that's just going to that cup is going to be the reason upon which he's going to have the answers that he needs. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Okay, so he overtook them and spoke those words to them, and they said to him, "Why does my Lord say such things? Far be it from your servants to do anything of the kind. Here we brought back to you from the land of Canaan the money that we found in the mouths of our bag. How then could we have stolen any silver or gold from your master's house?" Right? It's kind of what I was thinking for. Like, we're not thieves. Just the opposite. We had you heard how we were honest and brought back the money that we thought you unintentionally gave to us. Whichever of your servants is whichever of your servants. So they don't know that it's true yet. They're just saying they come back. They're being accused, and they're saying this is ridiculous. We would never do such a thing. And check anything you want because we didn't do it, right? I mean that's because they have no idea they were set up, right? And so they say whichever of your servants is found with it is found with shall die. Like we know we're innocent, so kill anybody who you find it, and the rest of us you can throw in jail. That's how sure we are that we didn't take this. He replied, although what you are proposing is right, that we should kill the person who stole and jail the rest of you, only the one with whom it is found shall be my slave, but the rest of you shall go free. So what is interesting, what's happening here is, and this is kind of what we were talking about before, which is that if this plan goes south, and if the brothers don't do what we hope they will do, then Joseph's plan B is, I'll have my full brother with me, and he won't be around you toxic guys. I'm saying he'll be my slave. He's just going to live in my house with me as my brother. He's innocent of everything. One thing I know for sure is he's done nothing wrong this entire time. And I will have at least my brother with me. And so I will have separated the one person I want with me to stay with me, and everyone else can go. So that's what, if so, so he has a plan B if his plan doesn't work. Ultimately, is still get, Joseph wins either way. So each one hastened to lower his bag to the ground, and each one opened his bag. He searched, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. That goes back to Arthur. Remember when you were saying it's like he's like slowly toying with them. It's like, and he's and even like painfully toy, like because they're all just hope. Like if their memory of the story with Jacob is true, then all they care about is just it not be Benjamin, right? And so they're going from oldest to youngest, and they're like, all right, fine, Reuben, Shimon, Levi, we could Judah, we don't care. Come on, get to Benjamin. Let's make sure he's fine. And they're taking their time. Anyway, the oldest to youngest, and the goblet turned up in Benjamin's bag. Oh, the one person. At this, they rent their clothes, each reloaded his pack animal, and they returned to the city. So, why did they rend their clothes? Mourning. Yeah. They realized, oh my God. And it's like not more, they themselves are mourning, they're mourning the whole circumstance. Like everything is just, this could not be worse. Everything which was so great before, we have to, we talked about the story um of uh, of Joseph being a roller coaster ride of he goes through great heights and then depths and then heights and then depths and heights, and that's the brothers too, heights, depths, heights, like oh my God, they went to get food, they came back and they came back, then now they have silver in their bags, and they go back to Jacob and say we need to go back with Benjamin to get Shimon back, and then they and then they're at the depths, and then Jacob finally agrees, and that there are heights, and now they're eating, and they're at the heights with Joseph, and they're all, and now they and back to the depths again. When Judah and his brothers re-entered the house of Joseph, who was still there, they threw themselves on the ground before him. Now, the only names that we encounter in this story in a while are Reuben, Judah, Benjamin, Joseph, right? So Shimon being jailed, yes. Correct. But the point is it's becoming clear, like, who are the characters in all this? And Benjamin actually becomes Benjamin's is a vessel, is a vehicle for this stuff to happen. Benjamin really is, ultimately is irrelevant. He's being used in all this. This story is really just about Judah. And you'll know it's really just going to hear Judah's name only. Judah, who becomes the patriarch of our people, essentially. I mean, Jacob is, but there's going to be that question about who's the patriarch. Is Is it Judah, or is it Joseph? And depending on
Well, this is emphasizing what Arthur said about revenge. He's certainly getting his revenge on his brothers, really seriously with this.
Well, yeah. Why? Explain what you mean by that.
Well, he was angry at him, at all his brothers, and now he's basically framed them.
Well, he's framed Benjamin, and Judah, like, so. I think if Joseph were to order his brothers from favorite to least favorite, Benjamin would be first, obviously favorite, and then I think Reuben would be second, and I think Judah would be third, and then I think Shimon would be last. And I think that's part of what's happening here. And I think that in all the other brothers, we have no idea. They're somewhere in between. Levi maybe second to last, and all the others. My point being is that Judah, I think he had a relationship with Judah, maybe because of Judah's age, responsibility, whatever. And Judah was one who did tell the brothers, let's not kill him, let's just sell him into slavery, which isn't necessarily so heroic, but at least he wasn't as bloodthirsty as his other brothers were. So who knows? But I think that that's the case, because we know that the author is a fan of Judas, and so Judah is now the essence of the story. When Judah and his brothers re-entered the house of Joseph, who was still there, they threw themselves down on the ground before him. So, oh, by the way, now we've got Benjamin bowing too. So the only one who hasn't bowed yet, who needs to bow, Jacob. Yeah.
You want a little religious spin on this?
Sure, why not?
So, and this is really coming from me, but
yeah.
I think it's obvious. So we know that the Messiah is going to come from the house of David, and therefore the house of Judah.
Okay.
Because David is from the house of Judah.
Okay.
So at some point in the story, Judah has to become the hero on some level. He has to acquit himself very, very well.
Right.
Because after all, he's the ancestor of the Messiah, for goodness sake.
And us, Jews.
And therefore us.
Yeah. No. That's. Oh no. That's. I'm agreeing with you, and I was saying it a little differently, but which is that, look, the narrator is writing from the Judah place now. That Judah is this is a southern kingdom author who is the J author, who is now saying, this is us. This is who we are. This is Judah is needs to be seen as, as the patriarch of our people, and he's the next in line from Jacob. So we're Jews, and that's what matters. And so I just think it a little differently, but it's ultimately the same point, which is it's now about Judah. So, and by the way, that was spelled out earlier when Jacob, let Benjamin go in Judah's care, because Judah had the capacity to communicate what was important, which was, look, send him with us so we can live and not die, us, our children, our future. You can trust me. It's not about I don't want to kill my kids if I don't come back, because I don't want to kill off the future. The future's critical here. You just know that I'm not going to let you down. I'm going to sit there and be and stand for the future as much as you are, Dad, Jacob, trying to stand for the future. So I think that at this point, like, we have this, it's as solid as can be. Judah is now the new leader. And Joseph says to them, what is this deed that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me practices divination? So clearly, maybe this is Joseph trying to throw them off the scent a little bit. Judah replied, what can we say to you, my Lord? How can we plead? How can we prove our innocence? Because again, yes, they see that Benjamin had the goblet in his bag, but they know that he really didn't, that there's something going on here. And they feel as if they just want to prove their innocence because they did nothing wrong. And they know they've been framed. And they're probably wondering who is it that framed them. Maybe it was that sniveling little servant of who did it because he didn't like us for some reason. Joseph seemed to like us, and maybe the servant was a little jealous that we were getting all this great attention, and we're these crazy foreigners, and who knows why, but we did nothing wrong. And we never wanted to go into your house in the first place. We didn't even want your cup. We didn't want to be near your cup. All we wanted was grain. So it's like, this is crazy. And he says, God has uncovered the crime of your servant. Here we are, then, slaves of my Lord, the rest of us as much as he in whose possession the goblet was found. So let's talk about that, because that is not what it means, or I don't think it is. Like, what's going on here? What do you think?
It seems like a pretty stand-up answer that he's taking responsibility, even though he doesn't understand how it happened. He said, it's there.
Yeah.
To be seen. We're your slave.
We're all responsible for what each one of us may have done, for what one of our people has done.
Yeah, I think it goes even deeper than that. But yes, I agree. I agree. Both of you said for sure.
Is this a referring?
I think so. I think so. We're all guilty here. And it may not even be for the things that, like, I understand that it's all about the goblet, but I think the time has come for us to confess. What we've done in the past is we're all guilty here. And this is all God, this is all coming around to us right now. And they, by the way, said this in jail to each other. Didn't I tell you that you shouldn't have don't kill those, don't sell them to slavery? And they kind of said that, but now they're saying it to Joseph, and they're kind of saying, we gotta take some responsibility.
Yeah, there is something that really supports that I was puzzling about. It sort of explains it. It was verse 6.
Of the next chapter, or the first?
No, one that we just 44:6.
40. Okay.
When he overtook them and spoke those words to them, the word being is the very one from which my master drank.
Yeah.
Uses for divination. Whereas often they don't say those words. They'll repeat the whole thing, just what I said. But it kind of undermines it and makes it so it's not. So it might be the bigger thing,
I think it's the bigger thing. Yeah.
It kind of supports maybe that you're right.
And the thing about it is that, and interestingly, Joseph wasn't fully ready for it, right? What I mean by that is Joseph was like, no. I want you to, let's talk about the goblet. I wasn't ready for you to fess up to everything, right? Because Joseph then says, but he replied, far be it from me to act thus. No. I'm not blaming everybody. I'm not there yet to accept your apology for something that you did, and I want to hear that apology for. I'm not ready. All I want to do, because I want to drag this out a little bit longer. And so far be it from me to act thus. Only he in whose possession the goblet was found shall be my slave. The rest of you go back in peace to your father, right? And the brothers are like, no, we're turning ourselves in. It's like fascinating what's happening here, at least as I see it. It's a wow. I'm so glad, by the way, that at least we're going to be able to get to this. We're at this climax, and we're going to get to it next, in our last session, because it's so meaningful and so powerful. It's that that the brothers are saying, and again, it's worth just repeating that line. How can we plead? How can we prove our innocence? And then they realize God has uncovered the crime of your servants. They all know that they're innocent. They're not taking. They can't possibly. If they really believed that they had done a crime, I don't know. doesn't. It's if they know that God hasn't uncovered something because it's not. They didn't commit this crime, so God has uncovered a different crime.
A comment.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're calling Joseph, but a prophet or something. They have heard about his reputation. They know that he is the one that directed Egypt to save from the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of drought. He's got a reputation that's going all over the whole world,
Okay.
wherever anybody who passes along and travels through. And then they're given this feast. And what was the word that was used? That the word that their astonishment.
Yeah.
Um, it's this miracle worker. They may not have any suspicion that he's their brother, but it's this miracle worker who recognizes their age, and they're in awe of how could this person who has this reputation keep going on, and they're just overwhelmed with one event after another, finding the silverback when they get home, when they leave the first time, and now this situation.
You mean they're like astonished at like the voodoo that's happening out of Egypt right now, which is like, it's like it's more than just like the guy knows the future, the guy knows how to save up, like everyone else is starving, but they're doing fine. The guy knows how to
It's just
put ourselves in order.
confirming his reputation.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
They're experiencing what they have heard as rumor.
Right. The astonishment is like, oh my God, you are everything that the myth that we all thought you were. Right? Which is, yeah, that's kind of cool too. Good idea. Good point. Yeah.
And sort of like Joseph was enslaved by the brothers, and I was wondering why they enslaved Benjamin, but maybe to have it mirror the earlier one.
He
wasn't in jail. He's not going to be killed. He's not going to have his hand cut off. He's going to be enslaved.
Right, but I think there's, and it's just based upon just my feelings based on the whole text, the narrative, that I think what's going on is that this is part of the plan is that Joseph has a plan A and a plan B. Plan A, which is what he wants to happen, is that the brothers will be sufficiently contrite and will have repented, will do things the right way. It'll give Joseph a way to bring Jacob, brothers, the whole family, and all their stuff down to Egypt so he can save them, and which is what he wants to happen. Plan B is if the brothers really turn out to be the nasty people that they used to be and haven't changed any, then at minimum he's got Benjamin, and which is at least a relatively good consolation prize for Joseph, because then he gets to live off his days with his full brother, and he gets to and he gets to also protect his let's call it innocent brother from the the behaviors of his bad other brothers. And so I think that's kind of how, and that's why Joseph was like, no, I don't even want you guys. Like, and the presumption is that he sends them back, and never come back here again, right? And I know your father is going to send the delegation to get Benjamin, but don't even try. That's kind of like what's the subtext also, or that we're not seeing, which is that Joseph's like, and this is it. So Benjamin stays, you go, and and we now have a what's it called when a husband when a person when there's that's not a restraining order, right? You can't come within, and you can't come within 150 miles of Egypt ever. So anyway, last thoughts before we close today, and any other thoughts, and remember next week is our last week, and the good news is that next week we'll be able to experience the absolute climax of the story, and and bring your tissues with you because it's a tearjerker. All right. Thank you, everybody. It's so good to see you, and I'll see you next week.